I was Marcus Coleman, a 32-year-old veterinarian, and I had a peaceful life with my father in Seattle. My mother had passed away 5 years ago and my father was very lonely. Last year he married my stepmother Linda. Linda seemed very compassionate and took good care of my father. But 6 months later my father began experiencing a mysterious illness. He constantly had nausea, dizziness, and fatigue. Doctors couldn't find the cause. A year later my father passed away. The cause of death was recorded as heart failure. Linda seemed very sad, but there was a strange relief in her eyes. 2 years later, while cleaning my father's room, I found something very shocking. My name is Marcus Coleman. I'm a veterinarian working at Pine Street Veterinary Clinic in the Capitol Hill area of Seattle. I've been doing this job for 10 years and I love animals very much. I especially enjoy working with dogs and cats. We provide all kinds of veterinary services at our clinics, from emergencies to routine checkups. My father, William Coleman, was a 63-year-old retired electrical engineer. He had worked at a prominent aerospace company for 35 years and was receiving a good pension. We had a beautiful house in the Ballard area. It was a 3-bedroom house with a garden and a Puget Sound view. My father had bought this house with my mother 30 years ago. My mother, Catherine Coleman, had passed away from breast cancer 5 years ago. This had been a huge loss for us. My mother was a very strong and loving woman. She and my father had a happy 30-year marriage. Catherine's death deeply affected my father and he remained depressed for a long time. After my mother's death, my father withdrew from his social life. He stopped meeting with friends and began living alone at home. I visited him frequently, but he was still very lonely. He had planned to spend his retirement years with my mother. My mother's absence was unbearable for my father. 2 years ago, my father met Linda Peterson. Linda was a 55-year-old widowed woman. She lived in Belltown and had worked as a nurse at a hospital. After retiring, she was doing volunteer work. She and my father had met at a community center. Linda initially seemed very kind and understanding. She understood my father's loneliness and supported him. Thanks to Linda, my father began reconnecting with life. They went on walks together, went to movies, and participated in social activities. My father and Linda's relationship developed quickly. 6 months later, my father told me he was thinking of marrying Linda. I was initially worried because my father was very fragile after my mother's death. But Linda really seemed like a good person and made my father happy. Last March, my father and Linda got married. They had a small ceremony with only close friends attending. Linda moved into our father's house. I also supported this decision because I didn't want my father to live alone. Linda's presence was very good for my father. The first months of their marriage went very well. Linda made beautiful touches to the house. She respectfully preserved my mother's belongings and revitalized the home. My father looked much more cheerful and energetic. Linda really acted like a compassionate woman. Linda took very good care of my father. Every morning she prepared special breakfast for him, never forgot to give him his medications, and took care of his health. My father was very pleased with Linda's attention. He constantly told me how wonderful Linda was. From September onwards, I began noticing strange changes in my father. My father, who used to be very energetic, began looking tired and weak. His appetite decreased and he started losing weight. Linda was very upset about this situation and constantly took my father to the doctor. In October, my father's symptoms got even worse. He constantly experienced nausea, dizziness, and was getting very weak. Doctors ran various tests but couldn't make a definitive diagnosis. They said it might be age-related problems. In November, my father got even worse. He had difficulty walking, was constantly shaking, and experiencing memory problems. Linda took him to different doctors, but none could give a clear explanation. This situation worried both me and Linda very much. In December, my father was hospitalized. He had severe dehydration and electrolyte imbalance. Doctors applied intensive care treatment. Linda never left my father's bedside at the hospital. She looked very worried and sad. In January, my father's condition improved slightly and he was discharged. But he was very weak at home too. Linda took very careful care of him, never forgot to give his medications, and prepared nutritious meals. My father said he was very grateful to Linda. In February, my father got worse again. This time, heart rhythm disorders also began. The cardiologist detected problems in my father's heart. He said it could be normal considering his age and general health condition. At the end of March, my father was hospitalized for the last time. This time he had very serious heart failure. Doctors did their best, but my father's condition was very bad. Linda and I constantly kept vigil at the hospital. At the beginning of April, my father passed away. The cause of death was recorded as acute heart failure. This was a huge shock for us. My father had deteriorated so rapidly within a year. Linda looked very devastated and was constantly crying. The funeral was very emotional. My father's former work colleagues and friends attended. Linda looked very sad and talked about how much she loved my father. I also tried to support Linda because she had also experienced a great loss. My father's will was simple. He had left his house and savings to Linda. I wasn't surprised by this because Linda had taken very good care of my father. Linda was very upset about this situation and said she didn't want to accept the money. After the funeral, Linda remained alone in the house. I visited her frequently, but she was very depressed. She was having trouble adjusting to my father's absence. But gradually she began to pull herself together. 6 months later, Linda decided to move out of the house. She said it was too difficult to live in this house full of my father's memories. She decided to sell the house and announced she would move to another city. Before Linda moved out of the house, she wanted to organize my father's belongings. I also helped her. We collected my father's personal belongings, photographs, and memories together. Linda became very emotional and said she missed my father very much. While cleaning my father's study, I found old files. These were engineering projects and financial records for my father's work period. Linda said these files weren't important and we could throw them away. While going through the files, I saw my father's personal notes. These were diary notes he had kept in his last months. My father had kept detailed records about his health condition. These notes were very valuable to me. While reading the notes, I discovered very surprising things. My father had suspicions about the medications Linda gave him. He had noted that some medications didn't have doctor prescriptions. He had also written that he felt bad after the meals Linda gave him. The most shocking note I encountered was at the end of the page. My father had written that he suspected Linda was secretly giving him something at night. He had noted that after taking sleeping pills he slept very deeply and woke up feeling very bad in the morning. Reading these notes scared me very much. My father's suspicion of Linda was very worrying. Maybe he had become paranoid or his illness had confused his mind. But the notes were very detailed and logical. Among the files, I found something even more shocking. My father had secretly collected hair samples and kept them in small plastic bags. Each bag had a date written on it. This was very strange behavior. When Linda saw these files, she was very surprised. She said my father had exhibited paranoid behaviors in his last period. She claimed his illness had affected his brain and he had lost touch with reality. This explanation seemed logical. But a suspicion arose in me. My father's notes were very systematic and consistent. They didn't seem like just the paranoid fantasies of a sick man. Linda's reaction also seemed a bit strange. That night at home, I read my father's notes again. I analyzed every detail and created a chronology. My father's health problems had started exactly 6 months after Linda moved into the house. This was a very interesting coincidence. I also examined the hair samples my father had collected. Why had he collected these? Maybe he suspected someone was poisoning him. But this was a very serious accusation, and I couldn't accuse anyone without evidence. I decided to do research. I researched mysterious deaths and poisoning cases on the internet. I found very surprising information. Some poisons acted slowly and could create natural death causes like heart failure. As a veterinarian, I knew the effects of some poisons. Antifreeze, rat poison, and some plants could cause chronic poisoning. The symptoms were very similar to what my father had experienced. I decided to have my father's hair samples tested. Toxicology tests could be done in veterinary laboratories. I secretly sent the samples to the lab and requested heavy metal poisoning tests. 2 weeks later, the test results came. High amounts of thallium were found in my father's hair samples. Thallium was a very dangerous heavy metal and could cause slow poisoning. This was definitely a substance that couldn't be found naturally in the body. This result shook me very much. My father had really been poisoned. Thallium poisoning created exactly the symptoms my father had experienced: nausea, hair loss, neurological problems, and finally heart failure. Thallium used to be used in rat poison but was now banned. Even very small amounts could be lethal. Since it was odorless and tasteless, it was easy to mix into food. I remembered that Linda was a nurse. She had medical knowledge and knew the effects of poisons. She also prepared my father's meals and gave him his medications. She had opportunity and knowledge. But I still couldn't establish motive. Why would Linda want to kill my father? Did she want my father's money? Or was there another reason? I needed to find answers to these questions. I began researching Linda's background. I looked up her name on the internet and found very surprising information. Linda's previous husband had also died in a similar way. This was a very suspicious coincidence. Linda's first husband, Frank Peterson, had died of a sudden heart attack 3 years ago. He had also died a year after marrying Linda. No police investigation had been conducted because it was seen as a natural death. This information was very disturbing. If 2 husbands had died in similar ways, this pattern was very suspicious. Could Linda be a serial killer? This thought horrified me. I decided to go to the police, but I only had my father's hair samples. Would these be accepted as legal evidence? Also, Linda had a very good reputation, and no one looked at her with suspicion. I met with Detective Johnson and explained the situation. He was also very surprised, but said he could start an investigation. My father's body needed to be exhumed and an official autopsy performed. A court order was obtained and my father's grave was opened. This was a very emotional process, but I had to learn the truth. Official toxicology tests were performed and the results confirmed what I had found. Linda was arrested and charged with first-degree murder. The death of her first husband was also reinvestigated. Thallium poisoning was detected in both cases. The court case process took a long time, but in the end Linda was found guilty. She received life sentence without parole. She was also found guilty of insurance fraud because she had inherited large amounts from both husbands. Linda's motive was entirely financial. She married elderly and wealthy men, slowly poisoned them, and took their inheritances. She was a very calculated and cold-blooded killer. The things my father noticed couldn't save him but ensured the truth came out. Thanks to the evidence he collected, Linda's crimes were exposed. We saved other people's lives. This incident taught me how complex people can be. Linda looked very normal and caring but was actually a dangerous psychopath. My father unfortunately wasn't her first victim. Today Linda is serving a life sentence in prison. My father's inheritance was recovered and donated to charities. Justice was served, but my pain continues because it can't bring my father back. I still keep my father's last notes. His intuition was right and he had realized the truth. I wish I could have believed him more. Maybe I could have saved him. This experience was very traumatic for me but also strengthened me. I now evaluate people more carefully and know that even trustworthy-looking people can have dark sides. In memory of my father, we established a foundation in Seattle. It aims to prevent elderly abuse and protect the elderly from potential predators. This way my father's death was transformed into a meaningful purpose. Linda's case created a big shock in the medical community. New regulations were issued regarding stricter background checks for caregivers. This way similar tragedies can be prevented in the future.